sure all of you, every day you wake up, you drive to school with your school textbooks, your notebooks, after class, maybe before work, you're hungry, so you stop by for a cheeseburger. Well, I'm sure at the end of the day, when you get home, you take a moment to pause and reflect on the carbon footprint you left all over the city. That includes from driving your car to, yes, eating a cheeseburger. So I'm pretty sure you all stop and reflect and think about what you could have made differently, what kind of choices you could have made to make a better difference. So if you didn't, that's okay, because it's never too late to start caring about the environment. So to start off with, I'm going to explain what a carbon footprint is. According to the article published for timeforchange.com, your carbon footprint is the total amount of greenhouse gases produced by individually and in direct support of human behavior. So there's a thin line between your carbon footprint and global warming, but I'm not going to talk about global warming too much just because it's so broad, but because your carbon footprint is your individual acts that you take on your individual level. So I'm going to try to tell you why you should reduce your carbon footprint and what steps you can take by helping make a change in the environment, from the transportation you use to the learning materials at school to the types of food you eat at your favorite fast food restaurants. So to start off with, the most obvious is, of course, driving. So I'm sure all of you have heard that cars produce a lot of pollution in the environment. It's pretty common knowledge, but driving can cause more damage than you would think. According to the U.S. Energy and Information Administration, about 19.64 pounds of carbon dioxide are produced from 1 gallon of gas. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but that can really add up. According to the same article, it goes on to say that in 2004, they conducted a study from vehicles that use gasoline, and they found that 1,075 million metric tons of carbon dioxide was released in only 2004 of cars that use gasoline, and 444 million metric tons of carbon dioxide was used for cars that use diesel. So if those numbers aren't scary for you, you're releasing, every time you drive, you fill up your car, you're releasing a lot of carbon dioxide into the environment, and you're polluting it even more. So if those numbers aren't scary to you, there are different alternatives to driving. You can take the public transportation, you can ride your bike and be healthy and save the environment at the same time. The Fullerton Metro link is down the street, and if you really care about the environment like me, maybe you walk to school. So, but according to Larry West, an environmental issues expert, he stresses that having your tires properly inflated can help for the environment. So for those of you who don't have a choice but to use a car, maybe because you're juggling school, a job, maybe 2 jobs, your social life, and your home life, using your car is the best option for you. So there's one small thing you can do each month to help you save the environment. So the Larry West, he goes on to say that underinflated tires do indeed contribute to pollution. As I said earlier, for each gallon of gas in your car, about 20 pounds of carbon dioxide is released into the air. The website fueleconomy.gov says that inflating cars to their proper pressure can improve mileage about 3.3%, whereas leaving them lower mileage can lead to 0.4% for every PSI drop in pressure of all 4 tires. That basically means that your car isn't to its full potential, the car tires. So it's driving more, it's using a little bit more gas, and it might not seem a lot, but according to the same article, it goes on to say that it is polluting the environment, and it says that the average American drives about 12,000 miles each year, and if your cars aren't properly inflated, that causes about 144 extra gallons of gas at a cost of $300 to $500 a year. So it does add up. You could save, that's a pretty good amount of money. So secondly, the main thing you can use at school, another thing you can do at school to help protect the environment is buy used or rent school textbooks. To me, it just makes more sense to buy used textbooks or to rent them, because why would you pay maybe $120 a semester for a book you're going to use for 3 or 4 months when you can rent it for $30? And that might not seem like it's that much of a big deal, but according to Nature magazine, the world is home to to 3 trillion trees. People cut down about 15 billion trees yearly, and about 40% of that goes to school textbooks. So that might not seem like a lot, but maybe if even one school, instead of buying new textbooks and just, I don't know, reselling them for like $30 back, and when it costs you like $120, that doesn't seem like a good thing to me. So by buying or using used textbooks, you're helping reduce the need for the trees to be destroyed, but also reducing the amount of pollution that goes into producing the new textbooks. And that's how you can also help reduce your carbon footprint. And thirdly, the cheeseburger you had for lunch yesterday also contributed to your carbon footprint. According to OneGreenPlanet.com, from the wrappers and straws to the boxes and bags, fast food packaging counts for an estimated 40% of all litter in the U.S., with styrofoam being the most common food waste. Styrofoam takes 900 plus years to break down. It could take until forever, because studies have shown that it can last until the end of time. So according to the article, it says that besides the plastics used in your fast food, the process of making a burger also pollutes the environment. In a factory farm, which produces the meat and chicken and pork for the fast food restaurants, one cow releases about 70 and 120 kilograms of methane yearly. That can also lead to polluting the environment and helps with destroying the ozone layer. So methane is a gas. It's also a greenhouse gas, just like carbon dioxide, but it has 23 times the effect of carbon dioxide. So in the article, do cows' farts really significantly contribute to global warming? There are an estimate 1.3 to 1.5 billion cattle in the world, producing ridiculous amounts of methane gas. So what you can do, instead of buying a meal from McDonald's or any fast food restaurant that gets their produce from factory farms, you can go to restaurants that support small local farms like Chipotle. And they use local farms because that's the means of transportation that also reduces the need for carbon dioxide release. And it also, because it is a small farm, they have less animals that they actually need. A lot of the factory farms for, I don't know, McDonald's or Carl's Jr., a lot of the meat is just thrown away, but Chipotle, they state that they use smaller farms, which can lead to less amounts of greenhouse gases in the environment. So in conclusion, next time you're at a gas station, take a couple of extra minutes to check your tire pressures. It can save you a lot of money at the end. When you're shopping for your textbooks, look into renting or buying used textbooks, because it can also make a big difference not only in the environment but in your wallet. And thirdly, you can stop by, if you're hungry, you can stop by an eco-friendly restaurant instead of one that uses a lot of amounts of carbon dioxide.
All right, Priscilla, what did you think?
It was a good attention getter. I liked how you connected the audience to the topic because it affects all of us. There was a good preview as well. I think you could have gone further with definitions because maybe we don't know like the greenhouse gases and all that. And the organization was good. I knew the 3 topics, and I like how in those topics you had problem solution kind of strategy, and you were reading off your note cards a lot, but when you looked up, you made good eye contact and you had good gestures. You cited all your sources very well. You could have maybe moved around a bit to emphasize points. You used a lot of ums, and your conclusion was good. It was a good review of what you were talking about.
Yeah, let me start with that conclusion. I like the fact that you kind of tied everything together there and gave everybody just a little something they can do on an individual basis and reminded us of the things that you talked about as solutions in the body of the speech. I thought you did a good job on that. There's a very solid preview at the beginning, and everything is being organized, I think, very effectively. It's easy to follow what you're saying on those particular points. Spend a lot more time on the first issue than you do on some of the other issues, and that's not automatically a problem, but I do think that since you're talking about the carbon footprint so much, there are a couple of places where you get sidetracked a little bit. On the fast food, for instance, the styrofoam issue seems to be about something in landfills, not something about the atmosphere and CO2 and gases. Now, there may be CO2 gases and that sort of stuff associated with this, but there's not really an explanation of how that is the case here. And so that just felt like it didn't quite fit in with the other things that you were talking about. I'm still trying to figure out how the cows that Chipotle uses for their food don't have as much gas as the cows on the massive farms. I get, if there's a difference because of the concentration and the number that you're dealing with, that needs to be explained a little bit more. The transportation issue, there's a little bit of a hint of that, although I don't know how any of that gets measured, and so it seems to me to be a little bit of a stretch on that particular point. I thought you explained the idea of the carbon footprint pretty well. I know you're trying to avoid getting involved with the global warming issue, but since the carbon issue is, CO2 by itself isn't toxic, per se. It's not like it's. I mean, that's what you and I are breathing right now. We're creating a bunch of CO2 by breathing. If you guys would stop breathing, that would reduce CO2 substantially. That kind of thing. But it's not toxic in that way, except that it might crowd out the oxygen that somebody is getting. So, it's a little bit hard to avoid that issue and feel like you're really dealing with something substantive. I like the idea of the textbooks as a way of diminishing this, but I think you also need to have an explanation about why having the trees is important in this whole cycle, and you don't really quite get to that. So there's a lot of stuff in the speech that I think is really effective. It's nicely organized. Presentation, I think you do a nice job on. You are who you are. You're not trying to be somebody different. You've got kind of a quiet demeanor, and you're using that pretty effectively. You speak to us directly. I appreciated the eye contact and the way you addressed the audience for the most part. Sometimes the energy level seems a little bit low, but that's, I think, really kind of a reflection of who you are. You're a low-key person. You're trying to give us a warning. I thought there were a couple of nice spots where you did give us some good advice, though, and just checking your tires. I thought, well, that's a reasonable kind of, little piece of advice for people to follow through on. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.